crying, the distant sound of a child. So deeply frightened and mournful was the sound that it pulled Lydia out of sleep. It echoed like the saddest of songbirds, lost in the wind. "Hello?" she said quietly. Why was this child in her home? She pulled the covers aside and slipped out of bed onto her toes. She crept to her bedroom door and put an ear to it, desperately listening for the source of the cries. After a moment, with the slightest of touches and utmost minimal of noise, she cracked open her door. This was not her home. She had indeed just left her bedroom, but what she stepped into was not her hallway. Darkness, black and enveloping, curled around her feet, and however dark this place was, she could still see somehow. A light at the end of the hallway glinted through the cracks around a door. Steam belched out from the bottom, and that was where the cries were coming from. And the closer to the door she got, the more she noticed the squelching of the carpet beneath her feet, soaked clean through with what she could only hope was water. Closer still, and soaked through, became puddling. Once she reached the door, her toes were immersed. She swallowed hard and gathered what courage she could. "Hello?" she said so quietly that even she barely heard. She lifted a shaking hand to the door and gave a small series of knocks. No response, only the crying. Deep, sorrowful crying. She gently turned the knob and slowly let the door creak open, revealing a small boy, no more than 2 or 3 years old. He was pale blue with cold and stood in front of the tub as the water overflowed, spilling onto the floor and out of the bathroom. She ran to him. "Oh my God, sweetheart, what happened to you?" she asked as she grabbed the nearest towel and wrapped it around him, holding him close and rubbing the towel against his frozen skin. The boy hiccuped and cried, his wails never waning, never quieting. "It's gonna be all right, sweetie," she whispered to him between comforting shushes. Without warning, the door slammed open wide and bounced off the opposite wall. An infuriated woman burst in and grabbed up the naked child, shaking him wildly. She tried to stop the woman, tried to take the poor child from her. The woman's dirty blonde hair was wet and matted to her head. Her knee-length dress was in tatters and also wet. The flowers on it were faded and the fabric was grayed. "Stop that! Let him go!" It was as if she hadn't even been touching her, as if she hadn't heard her. She simply pushed the screaming child into the water and held him there. Lydia grabbed at the woman by the arm and forced her about face. What she saw was a woman without color, mid-30s, dark, empty eyes devoid of emotion, and a wide gaping slash across her pale throat. This sent Lydia running backwards from the bathroom as the woman slammed the door in her face, leaving her in a sopping wet hallway. No, let him go, you crazy bitch!" She pounded furiously at the door, tried to get back in, but it was no use. "It's no use," came the gruff voice of a man. "I've tried 1,000,000 times." He grunted out what was evidently a chuckle before saying, "Maybe more." Lydia began to back away slowly as the man took a hearty tug of whiskey that he seemed to be carrying with him. And he too was soaked to the bone. His long dark hair hung in strings over his face and shoulders. His suspenders sported as much wear as the woman's sundress, and a filthy tank top completed the ensemble, as well as a pair of half-laced work boots. But in his right hand, he clutched a bloody hunting knife. "We tried for years, see," he continued. "Tried to get pregnant." He stopped in front of the bathroom door. "You don't know what that does to a man's self-esteem when he can't make a baby." His eyes wandered a moment before resting once again on her. But as it turned out, she was taking birth control the entire time. Said she wasn't ready to be a mother. Another drink. But I forgave her. And I wanted a boy so badly that I begged her to stop. I loved my wife, but I wanted a son. He stared at the door. Before we knew it, Dylan, my boy, was born. He ran his hand tenderly along the door, tears welling to the surface as Lydia watched him. He was the light of my world, but Esther became depressed. As he stared at the door, Lydia could see a gaping hole through and through. She clamped her hands over her mouth and backed away as he continued. On his second birthday, she took him into the bathroom. She drowned him, he said as she saw the tears finally give way. By the time I got there, it was too late. I tried to save him. He was gone. And Esther, she just stood there like nothing happened. I held my little Dylan for a long time before I had decided to cut her throat, watch her bleed out for what she'd done to my angel. Lydia felt so sad for this poor man, for that poor child, even that woman. Tossing his bottle aside, he turned back toward her and pulled a revolver from the back of his belt, tossed back the hammer. "You shouldn't be here. You're too beautiful for this place," he said, taking a step toward her. "Go home, girl. Get out of here." He finished before putting the gun to his temple and pulling the trigger with a thunderous bang. Lydia woke in the night to see rivulets of rain cascading over her window. She took in a deep, heavy breath and let it out slowly, throwing the covers aside to get a glass of water. She threw her feet over the edge of her bed, where her toes squelched in the white carpet.